All right. Liz, my producer, brought this to my attention earlier on, and I'm like, nah, not really. But then, after seeing the clip, after seeing the YouTube video, I thought, holy schmokers, this is unbelievable. And you can see the video now. It is on our Facebook pages. Feel free to, of course, look at it and see what we're talking about. But basically, what happens, and I'll try to describe it to you as best I can. But there's a guy out there who's a YouTuber. His name's Sam Pepper. I guess, some people say, well, you shouldn't be giving him any more publicity. But that being said, social media is already doing that. And there's actually a petition going around to have this yanked off of YouTube, to which I honestly can't see YouTube doing, because at the end of the day, they want you coming to their service to do exactly what these people have done. Maybe not in the tasteless way that they've done it, but the idea is that if somebody who's a YouTuber can get so much exposure that other media is talking about it and driving more to the site, that's what YouTube wants. That's what Facebook wants. That's what Twitter wants. That's what everyone wants. So basically, this is a prank. It's, they're pulling a joke, a funny, a fast one on their buddy. Basically what happens in the video, there's two people in a car, one who is in on the joke, and one who is, we'll call the victim. So anyway, or the good friend of the boys trying to prank him. So they're driving along this sort of seedy part of, a desolate area, and their car breaks down or something happens. So they basically get out of the car and open the hood, and they're kind of looking at what's going on. And while all of this happens, someone comes up behind them and puts a face covering or a blanket over top of the head of the victim, of the guy that's being pranked. And they wrap him up with duct tape and all that stuff, and they throw him in a trunk. And they drive him away to some area. And then the video continues with the guy who's being pranked, the victim, sitting in a chair next to his so-called friend, who is also obviously in on the prank. And they pull the hoods off of the guy who's being pranked, the victim. And, of course, he's just absolutely hysterical because there's a masked man there and he's got a gun. And he holds, the other person who's in on it holds the gun up to the head of his friend and shoots him in the head, basically, with a blank, of course, because it's just a prank. It's only fun. It's only for laughs. And basically, shoots to execute this guy's friend right in front of his eyes. So imagine sitting there and you've been in the trunk of a car, you've been tied up, and then they pull the mask on and you're sitting there and there's a guy with a gun and he shoots the head of your buddy. Well, of course, the guy's hysterical. He's crying. He's a mess because of what he has just witnessed. His friend being shot after they've both been kidnapped. Then, of course, the real fun ensues when everybody pulls off their mask and goes, ha, 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 it was just a joke. And then, of course, the petition starts saying this is tasteless and such. And the funny thing to me is the reaction of the victim after being hysterical and crying because he's just watched his friend been shot in the head. He says, "No, I thought it was hilarious. What a great joke you guys could have played on me. We're still friends." Whereas, I would have probably kicked the guy in the groin and then continued on from there once he was down on the ground. So, which leads me to believe that everybody was in on this, including the kid that was allegedly tied up and thrown in the back of the car and witnessed his friend being shot in the head. I believe every one of these people are in on this, because this is the sort of thing that generates revenue on YouTube. Maybe he wasn't at the beginning, but then he said, "Hey, we'll give you a piece of the action, pal." "Oh, okay, let's go. This is great." So I'm still not convinced that this was even really a prank. I think that people were in on it anyway. Certainly, if not at the beginning, I would guess by the end. Simply because if you were the friend, you could probably have taken the video to the police and had this person charged with attempted kidnapping and, a whole host of other charges. So now, of course, the petition is going around saying, this should be taken off YouTube. To talk about all of this and whether this is just, small little minds that aren't fully developed or where it is going, Gary Dierenfeld is with us, social worker, yoursocialworker.com to find out more. He's with us now. Good afternoon, Gary. How are you today?
I'm good, and I just can't think as deviously as this.
Yeah, I would be along the same line as you, Gare, but, maybe because our brains are fully developed.
There are some youths out there and young adults who are such adrenaline junkies. In my work with youths going back even 20, 30 years ago, I used to work with some teenagers who would literally jump on top of subway cars to ride them through the tunnels. That's how addicted they were to crazy stunts and adrenaline. And
is this adrenaline or attention?
No, a little bit. One feeds the other.
Yeah.
And what I learned back then is that the vast majority of these kids came from remarkably dysfunctional homes where there wasn't a lot of appropriate guidance, limits, and if there was any discipline, it was abusive, be it verbally or physically. And these kids kind of grow up, and they're just into doing such crazy things. But here's the rub with this guy. He's going to be rewarded to the tunes of thousands and thousands of dollars for the ads he generates with every view of his YouTube video.
Are we judging this too critically, though, Gary? Are we just sounding like old guys here? We don't get it. We're old guys.
I don't think it's a function of age. I think it's a function of morality and what we would deem to be reasonable humor or not. Those of us who truly care about others don't want to engage in humor that is so contrary to the other person's well-being, even if only for a moment.
And if you want to see this video, by the way, you can on our Facebook page, or it is now up on the Scott Thompson Show page at 900chml.com to find out what we're talking about. What are these kids missing? What are they missing?
Yeah, they're missing they're missing the empathy gene, if you will. They haven't learned how to be empathetic to the victims of their pranks. As long as they can couch it in humor and revenue, it becomes acceptable. We don't need to think about what could be a tragic impact of this misplaced humor on the other because it feeds our narcissistic needs for adoration, attention, money, whatever. So the perpetrators of this stuff have to be quite grandiose in their thinking about themselves, and that's why they don't have the empathy.
So you think this is more about dysfunction than the undeveloped brain?
Those things can go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Not having a fully developed brain is, we want empathy, but the empathy comes from having an appreciation of one's impact on others and advancing the needs and well-being of others ahead of our own. And when you see a prank like this, it has nothing to do with empathy.
Is this, lots of people play practical jokes, lots of people are into that sort of thing. Is it any different just because it's more extreme?
It's along a continuum. So it's not either or, but where do you place it on the continuum? I'm not a big believer in pranks. I don't think people should run up behind other people and go boo.
Yeah, I've never been into that either.
Right? And so in all of these examples, some people think that it's fun or humorous doing things at somebody else's expense. But that's a poor reflection on you.
And what does this person do next? Because we all know in scenarios like this, it's, wow, you got to beat that one. How do you top it?
Yeah, and I can't even go there because, like I said at the top of our chat, I just don't have that devious a gene in my makeup to think of how you do top that. And here's the thing. in the race to top that, at some point it becomes so dangerous that somebody's going to be hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, life-threateningly.
Well, yeah, I mean, what's to stop this guy from trying to escape and then hurting the other people who are trying to prank him?
Sure, pounding his way out of a moving vehicle from the trunk with his head wrapped in a pillowcase or whatever that was.
What about the victim's reaction? I'm still not convinced that this was a prank. I think this was all staged.
Well, you know, you and I don't know, but you may be absolutely right. If you're not right, then it's a case of the victim aligning with his abuser, and so not wanting to feel ostracized or a wimp. Ha ha ha, yeah, I think it's funny too. Meanwhile, like you, I would have decked the guy.
Yeah, yeah, I would have. Is he an abuser rather than a prankster?
From my perspective, hands down, absolutely, unequivocally, that was such an abusive act. And here's the rub. Some people will couch their abuse in humor so that when the victim gets angry, then the abuser gets to point their finger and say, you can't take a joke. So no matter what, the abuser has positioned the victim to be the victim, no matter what. I see that in abusive relationships. I see that in relationships where one party is apt to use sarcasm every time they deal with the other party. Sarcasm is just verbal abuse disguised as humor. And when the person, can't take the sarcasm, then they're next chastised for not being able to take a joke. You can't win for losing with people who want to be abusive.
Oddly enough, this person allegedly has allegations of rape against him. Does that surprise you?
Well, I looked at the online newspaper article as well, and he's saying, there may be allegations, I haven't been charged. But having said that, when we see so little empathy, then what the hell's rape? From his perspective, hey, I didn't hear her say no. She may have been struggling, but she didn't say no, so I thought it was yes. And so these are folks who will narcissistically interpret the world in their own interest. So could he have raped someone? Well, I think if you're capable of pulling a prank like that, you're pretty much capable of any kind of disastrous...
That's a good point. What about copycats? Are you worried that this is spawning a generation of this?
Of course there's going to be copycats, because this just isn't the only idiot out there. And so there are other kids who grew up as well who may not have had the appropriate nurturing up to and including having been abused, who themselves may not know or understand or appreciate empathy, and they're going to look at this and think, hey, yeah, I can do that too at somebody else's expense. What a hoot. And maybe I'll make my fame and fortune on YouTube. Yahoo.
Should YouTube remove it?
YouTube won't remove it in all likelihood.
No, because it's generating interest, right?
There you go. So what a crazy mixed up world where such shenanigans, as long as it draws profit, is acceptable for public consumption.
What do you think would have happened if this, and again, I'm still not convinced it wasn't all staged, but what if something would have happened in regard to all of this? Somebody would have got hurt, or the victim reacted in some way, or let me even throw this at you. What about taking the video and going to police and saying, this is what this guy just did to me?
Sure. So I think this guy could have been up for so many criminal charges: forcible confinement, right? Assault, kidnapping, so many issues are at play that he would have been thrown into jail, and they might have thrown away the key for something like that.
This is what makes me believe that this has all been staged.
Well, but if you don't have even if it wasn't staged, if you don't have a complainant, if the victim of this prank sides with the abuser and says, ha ha ha, boy, did that ever get me, that was a good one, oh, let me share the revenue, and wants to go along with it, you don't have a complainant. So what's the police going to do?
What does that say about the victim that he's going along with this?
Well,
or that thinks it's fine?
Right. That speaks to that person's problems as well, either not having what we call the ego strength to confront or set a boundary with the abuser.
It's just like an enabler who allows a bully to do it.
Oh yeah. So they may not have the ego strength themselves. They may be, sometimes the victim aligns with the abuser out of fear, quite frankly. If I don't align with him, I'm going to be made to feel like a wuss on YouTube to all the other folks who look at my YouTube videos. So there can be a lot of coercive factors at play that can compel a victim to align with an abusive person.
Are you surprised at any of this, quickly? Is this like one of those things, oh my goodness, every day I see something totally different and this blows me away?
Every day I do see something totally different. And when you think you've seen it all, then you realize you haven't.
Gary Dierenfeld has been with us, social worker, yoursocialworker.com to find out more. And, of course, the video is on our Facebook page and on the blog as well. Gary, as always, thank you. I'm sure we'll have a discussion similar to this one again.